Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Life with Jamie and more. And I'm actually quite excited today because sitting directly in front of me is a guy who I've known for about 7 years, and it's my first actual face-to-face guest with this podcast. So we've had some technical troubles. But we are now good to go. So I'd like to introduce Mark. Mark, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'm a bit nervous, but
That's all right. Yeah, I know. I know exactly how you feel. Mark, so you are sitting opposite me here because your daughter has Down syndrome.
yeah.
If you can tell us a little about, can you expand, I suppose, on why you're sitting opposite us?
Well, I guess we'll start with how we met. And so we both live in Japan. And one day I was reading the newspaper, the Japan Times, and I saw a story about a family's fight to get their son into their local elementary school, and the school refused to accept their son because he had Down syndrome. And I hadn't met many other people in Japan who had kids with Down syndrome, so I was inspired to see Steve and Junko's message about how they fought to get their son into the elementary school. And because your name was in the newspaper, I was able to find you quite easily on Facebook and sent you a message. And that's basically where it all started, how we first met.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think you kind of reminded me because I had kind of forgotten how we had met. So I'm very glad that you reminded me how it all kind of played out.
Yeah.
You have a daughter. Tell us a little about your daughter.
So Nina is 8 years old. She goes to elementary school. She's in 3rd grade, and she has Down syndrome. She has a older brother, who's 10 years old. So with Nina, our story starts at the beginning when she was born. And when she was born, we weren't expecting that she was going to be born with Down syndrome. Actually, after she was born, everything was okay. And I had been up all night for the birthing process. And she was born in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was okay. I got my picture with the baby. And I then said to my wife, Kyoko, I'll go home to our son, who's still at home with his aunt, and the aunt will come up to the hospital. So I went home, everything's okay, took Neo to school, and then I went for a short sleep. And when I went for a short sleep, I woke up and called the sister-in-law, and she said, Mark, Nina's in another hospital, a bigger hospital, and Kyoko is in the hospital as well, has collapsed. And so I went up to the clinic. It was a small clinic that Nina was born in. And so Nina wasn't there when I had arrived, and they said that she had breathing problems, and that's why they took her to the bigger hospital by ambulance. Kyoko was still there. Kyoko had stood up and collapsed and was losing blood. And then I went in the ambulance with her to the big hospital, same hospital that Nina was actually in. And At that time, I thought it was just maybe the birthing process that maybe had made Kyoko a little bit lightheaded, and that's why she had collapsed. So then when we got to the hospital, it looked like the nurses and doctors had Kyoko under control, and I then went to the NICU to try and see Nina, and they wouldn't let me in.
Okay.
They said, no, you can't come in at this moment.
Okay.
So went back to Kyoko, and we talked. And what actually happened then, I think the part of the placenta hadn't been removed properly,
Right.
and that was causing her to lose blood.
Okay.
And then everything was okay, but again, at night, she had another episode where she was lost a lot more blood, and they had to, the doctors had to help her and give her blood, and it was pretty touch and go at some stages with Kyoko.
Right.
All in the same time, Nina was in NICU, and we didn't really know anything about what her condition or
Okay, so you knew nothing at that stage.
nothing
Okay.
still. And so I had kind of two fires to contend with at that stage.
Absolutely, yeah. You're trying to juggle where to kind of put yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remember Nina's doctor came in to Kyoko's room, and he could speak a little bit of English, and he was trying to say, he said, the chromosome and X and Y and chromosomes, and I was just like, what's he talking about? And they're doing blood tests, and he said, we're going to do this test, and it takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks until we get the test result.
Wow.
And at that stage, I did not know if you had an extra copy of your 21st chromosome, it basically means you have Down syndrome.
Had you even at that point, like, I suppose had you been thinking, okay, something is going on, something is happening?
I just thought it was, so from the original clinic, they told us it was breathing problems. And that's what I just thought. I thought it was something that she just needed something to cleaned up and should be okay. So I had no concerns about Nina. I thought she was okay. Until I went for lunch that day that the doctor told us, and did a little bit of Googling, and that's when I saw that the extra chromosome basically means your child will have Down syndrome.
Okay, so he had said he said something about an extra chromosome.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were basing your searches on that in a way.
And that's what popped up.
Right, okay.
And then that night I went back to the doctor, and I said, does Nina have Down syndrome?
Right.
Just directly.
It's a direct question, yeah.
And he said, we have to wait for the test result. And I said, but
Classic Japanese.
in your opinion, before the test,
Yeah.
just by looking at her, do you think she has Down syndrome? And he's like, I can't say until we get the test result. And I was mad. I went back to Kyoko in the room, and I was like, he won't tell us. Like, why can he not just be honest?
Yeah.
And
So Kyoko was essentially unaware about, well, she was as much as aware as you were about the potential of Down syndrome at this point, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you were feeding her information about kind of, it could be this. It might be this, yeah.
Yeah. And that night I went back to the home, and Kyoko's mother was there and sister-in-law. And I remember, like, I looked up how do you say Down syndrome in Japanese.
Yeah.
And I
right.
thought, okay, I have to tell them that Nina possibly has Down syndrome. And I told her mother, and her mother just had a very blasé reaction, like, oh, so what? Like, and I said, no. Like, I looked up in the dictionary and showed it to her. I thought, oh, maybe she doesn't understand my Japanese.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, I heard you, but so what? It's okay. And I was cross at her for such like a blasé reaction.
Right.
But later I've come to love that reaction, and she taught me a lot by, so what? She has Down syndrome. Doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
So eventually then Nina was let out of NICU.
How long was she in there for?
She was in for about 5 or 6 days.
Right. Okay.
But Kyoko was actually in hospital for longer with her medical condition.
Oh, okay.
And she was in hospital for 10 days. So they kept Nina. Eventually Nina could be moved into the same room.
Gotcha.
And so eventually 10 days later, both the girls got home. And at this time we had probably accepted that she had Down syndrome, and the test result was just a formality. And we could tell by her facial features, and it was pretty obvious that she had Down syndrome.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, again, kind of like a really different kind of experience of kind of getting into that whole parenting, like, you know, because she's not your first job. As you mentioned, kind of Nero, he's a couple of years older.
Yeah.
Certainly. So, you were, what was like, you got her home. How long was it before she actually came home? Like, you were all at home.
So it was 10 days.
10 days
After she was born.
So you got her home, and you were like, okay. What did you think was going to happen from that point? Did you have any kind of, you're like, okay, I'm just going to go day by day, or were you thinking about the future, or what was?
Well, I guess I need to go back a little bit further. My sister has spina bifida, and so I have lived with a sibling who's had special needs, and my parents, who were extremely supportive when I first told them about Nina.
Right. Okay.
And every night we talked on the phone after she was born. And my mum and dad were very supportive, because a lot of the fears and concerns that I had, they had experienced with my sister Ruth. And Ruth, for someone who cannot use her legs, she has shown all of us that nothing can stop her. She drives a car. She has played wheelchair basketball. She got married. Doctor said it was impossible for her to have children. She has given birth to 3 children.
Wow.
And
awesome.
She is an inspiration. And thankfully, because she is in my family, it made having Nina, I was able to see that things were possible.
Yeah.
And just because she had Down syndrome, it shouldn't affect her life.
Yeah. That's actually really good. And I think you have told me this before, and I'd forgotten about this actually until you reminded me just now. Like, and yes, I think that kind of has an impact. It had an impact on you. We're like, okay, like, my world hasn't collapsed around me. My world, it's like it's not the end of the world here. Like, you know, my sister did this, and this, you know, without legs.
Yeah.
And I think that, I guess, that has enabled you to kind of have the faith that things are going to go forward in the direction and everything will be okay in a sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great, and it's fantastic that you're able to kind of grab onto that, that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that's great. It's so good.
Well, I remember as well when Nina was born, I sent my closest friends emails and told them all, and they were all extremely supportive. And one of my friends, in particular in Canada, his son had been born with a heart problem. And he had been through something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So the NICU, all of that kind of experience. And he was very helpful as well. So it really helped just talking to people who had experience.
Mm-hmm. So there was a little bit of a network for you, would you say? Yeah, okay. How, because I suppose my experience was really different in a way. I didn't have, I felt I didn't have that network at all. So I felt really kind of like I was just the only guy in Japan with a Down syndrome child. And I was just going through it on my own. But I think 8 years ago, Facebook's around, all these things around, the kind of people were a bit more kind of connected in a way. So I guess that helped you a bit, would you say? Kind of being able to...
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did help. But I do remember thinking the same as you, that I'm the only person in Japan with a child with Down syndrome, so who was half Japanese, half British or Irish. And then I realized that before I met you, there's actually another guy from Northern Ireland who has a son with Down syndrome who lives in Kobe. And actually, when Nina was born, every year in Osaka they have a Down syndrome exhibition, and my sister-in-law and me went to the exhibition the year Nina was born. Nina and Kyoko stayed at home. And so the theme was like smiling faces. And
Right.
So they had I think about 100 pictures of kids with Down syndrome just smiling. Mostly from Osaka area.
Right.
And one of the pictures, I saw a boy with a dog, and the boy's name was Justin. And I was like, that's not a Japanese name. And I asked a lot of people, do you know anyone who has a son with Down syndrome?
Yeah.
And I asked so many people, and eventually I gave up looking for this guy. The next year, we went to the exhibition again, same location, and we were looking at the pictures, and my sister-in-law ran up to me and she said, "Mark, Justin's dad's here. Justin's dad's here."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "What?" So we introduced ourselves, and I told him a story about seeing his son's picture, and we exchanged contact details, and so at that time Nina was just 1 year old.
Right.
And one thing that he said to me that kind of struck me, he said, "Have you come to terms with it yet?"
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I thought it was quite strange to say that because Nina was 1 year old.
Mm.
And of course, like, I should have come to terms with it because she's one.
Mm.
1 year is a long time.
Mm.
But until he said that,
Mm.
I probably hadn't accepted it properly.
Mm.
And even though I had my family and friends,
Mm.
personally, I probably hadn't accepted it.
Mm.
And there's something else that Justin's dad said to me.
Mm.
He said, often we're disappointed by our own selfish expectations for our children.
Mm. That's interesting. Okay.
And I thought about that a lot. And I actually, when Nina was born, I remember crying to my parents saying, she'll never go to university, she'll never get married. And who cares
Mm. Mm.
if she doesn't go to university, if she doesn't get married? Because those are parental expectations.
Mm.
And if your kids with Down syndrome, or even your kids don't get married or don't go to university, who really cares?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. But I think what it is, though, is that a lot of guys have that. A lot of guys do dads have that feeling. I know guys, I've spoken to guys who straight away, and it's not about the expectations of, I suppose in the sense I don't agree that it's expectation of the children. It's actually, I think it's an expectation that where we wanted to be when we have children.
Yeah.
Like we fully expect to be going to in this route. This is where the route that we have always thought that we're going to be going.
Yeah.
And then the route, all of a sudden, it's not that route, and we have no control over this. And so we are in a world where things are not like everyone else.
Yeah.
And yes, expectation kind of creeps into that because we feel that we should be in this route. Well, not should be, but this is where we plan to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing. And I think there's a poem which I don't know whether you're familiar with, the
Yeah.
Welcome to Holland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, when did you first kind of hear of that poem?
So quite early on, I started searching for people on Instagram, and I found a lot in America, mostly mothers.
Yeah.
And there was one mother who put that poem on her Instagram, and I remember reading it, and I thought that's perfect. That's
Okay. How old? How many years into it was?
I can't remember, but I remember after talking to Justin's dad, I remember also thinking at that time, sometimes you get what you need, not what you want. And I tried to think that with Nina, that's what my life needed.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way. So
I was needed to look after someone with special needs. And I needed Nina in my life to teach me about the world. And it's a bit like that poem. Like you expect to go to, you want to go to Italy, but you need to go to Holland.
Yeah. That's where it is. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's a really interesting take on it, actually. And it's a take that I haven't thought about, to be honest. I haven't thought about that kind of way of kind of seeing it, yeah. So I want to go back to a point you said how you were trying to find, you couldn't find many dads out there. You were finding a lot of mums, and you weren't finding the dads. And I kind of want to talk about that point because I think that's why we're sitting here.
Yeah.
That's why we're having this discussion, because it is like, it's getting better. I feel it is getting better out there. However, it's got a hell of a long way to go. And I think that, especially kind of in this country, fathers tend to take a very backseat role with a lot of things,
Yeah.
with parenting. and it's a lot of it's on the mum. Obviously, we are not Japanese. You and I are not Japanese, so we have a different story to kind of follow, narrative to follow in a way. But I'm interested to kind of hear if you have any ideas as to why are dads not kind of putting themselves out there in a way. And I've obviously put myself out there now. Here I am. But not all dads are comfortable with doing that. And I wonder, why do you think that might be?
I guess it could be for a number of reasons. One reason I can think of, like, not just in Japan, but I guess a lot of the times the mothers are the ones that are looking after the children more.
The primary carer, essentially.
Yeah. But then they're probably more involved with the hospital appointments and things like that. So they're very up to speed with their current treatments and conditions. And perhaps maybe sometimes fathers don't know everything, I guess, and they step back. It's easier for men to be silent. And deal with it usually as men try to deal with things just by keeping quiet. And
Yeah. How about you? I mean, we've kind of talked a bit about kind of the journey so far, and which is so interesting to hear because it's really different to mine, and I love that because it's just like that's what it's about. It's about hearing kind of how you've kind of navigated your way through, and come out the other side. Because a lot of dads kind of can just curl up in a ball and just not know, and just feel like I don't know what to do, and they become non-functional as a dad, and but a lot of dads want to do, they want to be involved, but they don't know how.
Yeah.
And I think it's for me, a lot of it was actually around what I believe is kind of toxic masculinity, because for me that's what kind of really was holding me back in lots of aspects of kind of raising Jamie, and really in the last kind of couple of years, and more so in the past year. But that's just me. But I want it's such a we are generally, guys are not very good at kind of communicating kind of how we feel about stuff as well, and listening is always was never my strong point.
Right.
So I've got a little bit better. Are you a good listener?
My wife probably say no.
Yeah. Well, I've got a question here, which goes back a little bit to kind of when he asked you, have you accepted it? And I've got here, when did acceptance and reality start to kick in? They're kind of almost like two different things, really. But for you, real acceptance of Nina and Nina's condition.
Well, I think at that year point was a key moment, and I think I remember thinking I need to accept this. Just accept it, and so I think that year point really was the point where I accepted it. And
do you remember the moment that you kind of thought, like, okay, was there a point in you think, I can kind of pin it down to kind of, there was that day I was just sitting there over a coffee and thought, this is it.
It was until he asked me, have you accepted it, or have you come to terms with it? and I guess before then I hadn't even processed it. I hadn't even really thought about it. But after that, I thought a lot more about it.
Do you feel that it is, because for me personally, and I'm really open about this, is that I myself, I have accepted it, but it's also, there's a part of me that also, in a way, I still feel like where I was supposed to be, which was in Italy. There is a part of me that feels like I should be, and that's where I was expecting myself to be. That's where I was planning to be.
Yeah.
And all the acceptance in the world for me, I still find myself kind of split between those two kind of countries, Holland and Italy, myself. And it's just how I am.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that will always be like that, I don't know. But I think it's because like you, I guess, you have amazing moments, but you also have really like moments of just, frustration. Like me, I've got those. I have those.
Yeah.
And those kind of the ones that it's like those are, I start to say, have I really kind of accepted this?
Mm-hmm.
Where I kind of challenge myself and I question myself a bit more.
Yeah.
Did you ever kind of blame yourself?
Of course, yeah. I blamed pretty much everyone at one point. And then I quickly realized that I can't blame anyone. This is no one's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did for a very brief time, but yeah, I quickly realized you can't blame anyone. It's no one's fault.
Yeah.
And if you focus too much on the blame, then I don't think it's a good outset for the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, a lot of guys do though, right?
Yeah,
really, there's tons of guys and dads who do go through a lot and continue to blame themselves, which they shouldn't.
No,
Because it's just that is just how it's played out. That is just how it is.
yeah.
But as Nina's caregiver, have you ever kind of felt that you don't have the right tools to kind of deal with things? And
sometimes, yeah. Nina can talk both English and Japanese, because she can speak English and Japanese, but it's not perfectly clear, and sometimes feel frustrated that I can't help her with her speech to make it more clear. We have taken her to a speech therapist in Japan. Personally, I didn't really like that person. Their advice I thought wasn't really good.
what was their advice?
One piece of advice was, she said, when you're reading a book, read the words really slowly and pronounce each word very, very, very clearly. And I just thought that wasn't natural. Maybe they were right. Maybe my opinion is wrong.
But you did what you thought was right.
But I did it my way.
You did it your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that same speech therapist, so they were working for a hospital, and then they left the hospital and they've opened their own kind of private business now. So if we want Nina to see that speech therapist, we have to pay money now. It's not covered by health insurance.
Right.
And it seems to be in Japan that speech therapy isn't really covered.
Yeah. I think as they get older, I think as they kind of get to a certain age, I don't think it really, because that is an aspect of actually which is kind of a little bit weird in Japan, because the kind of care, like therapy, physical therapy, those kind of things are, I'd have to say, pretty piss poor in this country, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that makes it a already difficult job even harder.
Yeah.
Like, and then, of course, throwing the language challenge, being Japanese. But that is, I'd have to say, I feel that this country is about 30 years behind Western countries with these kind of early intervention things.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you. I felt like, again, if we weren't living here, if we lived in another country, is that, how different would it be? How different would Jamie be? In a way? I recently I've kind of started thinking to myself, I don't know. But that's just how it is. This is where we are. What has been like a pivotal point so far in the journey with Nina?
We've had a few. Probably. So with Nina, she's a very slow eater, and the doctor said to Kyoko she needs to take X amount of liters of milk every day.
Is it so? Currently, she still has.
No.
Oh,
This
okay.
This when she was a baby.
Right.
And it took us about 45 minutes to 1 hour to give Nina one bottle. And we had to do like 6 or 8 bottles a day.
Wow.
And in the beginning, and that was especially hard.
Yeah.
I would have given up. Nina was so slow at sucking the milk down. But I would have given up and said we tried our best, but my wife would never give up, and she persisted, and she tried her best. Because of my wife, then I thought I can't give up either. So we pushed through. Then eventually she could start eating solid food, but she couldn't eat it really by herself. And for the longest time ever, we had to help Nina feed herself. So I guess a big pivotal moment was Nina being able to eat by herself. And she only used to eat pasta and crackers.
Yeah.
And so if we ever went to a restaurant, we'd have Nina's pasta, and if she didn't want that, we had just these plain crackers. That's the only thing that she used to eat.
Wow. And that's hard. That's really tough. And that's tough, isn't it? Because kind of essentially you've got two options, and you go in with those two options. It's like, okay, this is like, she's not going to eat this, and like we've got nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And so you just, that's your living. That's the Holland right there, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, and you just roll with it. You just do the best that you can do, right?
Yeah.
While everyone else around you is, eating very different things. You're like, no, well, this is it. And also, it takes her a long time to eat,
Yeah.
But that was a pivotal kind of moment for her to actually really start eating herself.
Yeah, start eating herself, and that was a pivotal moment. Another pivotal moment was going to school, preschool, and
this is like kindy would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we couldn't get Nina into the same kindy as Neo,
Right.
because they said they were full.
Okay.
And the way it works in Japan, you probably know it's quite difficult to get your children into a preschool because the numbers in the city are so high, and they have like a point system where if they go to another school, they can be put on a waiting list to get into the same school as a sibling. So Kyoko decided that we should probably send Nina to special needs preschool. But it was a bus ride away, and the school provided a bus. For the first maybe 6 months, they wouldn't let Nina, a parent had to come with Nina to school.
So you had to go together.
Well, I did it a small number of times. My wife did the majority of times. So she took Nina to school. I think for the first 3 months, she had to stay in the school from when the bus arrived until I think she left at midday. And then,
Wow.
and so Nina was 3
Right.
at that time.
Okay.
And I think they wanted just a very smooth transition for all of the kids that come to that special needs school.
Wow.
Eventually, Nina was able to go to school by herself on the bus. So when she was 3 or 4 years old, she was getting on the school bus and going to school, and she could go.
So she was at 3 or 4 years old. She was walking.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
She started walking. Yeah, maybe about 3 or 4.
Right.
It
Right.
was a little bit later. But
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
So then eventually she moved from that special needs preschool to the same preschool as her brother Neo,
Gotcha.
and she was able to go to that preschool then for 3 years.
What was the big, like, for you, like, what was the kind of the big difference you saw between that special school, which was for children who had special needs and disabilities, compared to Neo's, like, preschool, kindergarten? What was the difference that you could see on a, like, visually when you would take them there, when you would pick them up? What was the difference?
Night and day.
Yeah.
It was totally. I hated the special needs school. I thought it was doing Nina more harm, just because of it wasn't the school's fault. School was good. The teachers were good. It was the kids that they had. They had just had a large variety of different kids with different needs. And most of those kids in Nina's class were screaming and shouting and throwing things and attacking people. And on a few occasions, Nina was attacked by the other students. And I thought that she was actually picking up bad habits from those other kids. Like, she started maybe screaming and shouting. And I thought it was her school environment. And it was more so the environment that the special needs school had. And so compared to her other preschool, there's more kids in the class. There weren't as many, probably there weren't as many episodes, should we say, of calming down certain students So yeah, Nina definitely was a lot happier, and we were a lot happier.
So she was, because generally that's kind of one of the big things, isn't it? If the kids are, and you can kind of pick that up, right, with the kids as well, even when they're really young, is they'll be kind of a little bit kind of standoffish, or they won't kind of want to do things or go, you know. But that's great. So she was actually, you could visually see that she was happier going to, for you, the kind of mainstream kindergarten, preschool in a way.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
And this, of course, this is your story. This is like, you know, other people don't have, sometimes they're not in that position and they don't have those kind of choices. So this is just your story.
Yeah.
So what happened next? So she, was it that, but then she went to elementary school.
Yeah, that's the next stage after preschool in Japan. And some people criticize Japanese preschools because they don't teach anything. But in Nina's case, that was great and that was perfect because it's singing and dancing and playing sports and playing outside and growing vegetables and all the things that Nina enjoys. So she goes to the same elementary school as her brother, local elementary school, and there it was more the academic setting, in contrast to the preschool. So sit at your desk, write down your name, do all these things, math and Japanese and all the subjects. And it wasn't until Nina went to elementary school that I really noticed the gap between her and other kids her age. And I always have to tell myself, don't compare. Like, you can't compare. Every child is different.
Do you still find yourself doing that now?
Sometimes. Yeah, but I shouldn't, and but it is just things that happen naturally.
It is. It's that just, I think it's, in a way, it's very much like a, you know, there is, as a parent, I think that's a part of kind of what we, you know, we compare. I think that's, you know, even with typical kids, we still compare.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So she goes, okay, so she's in mainstream school. Now, was that a smooth transition in?
No, because that was the start of the pandemic. Was it? Or the 2019?
So she started in 2019, so it's a year before.
Year before.
Yeah.
So yeah, she'd started school, and then the pandemic hit. So then it kind of disrupted school. So generally it was a pretty smooth transition.
So the school was welcoming.
Yeah.
The school said, no problem.
Yeah.
We can do this. Yeah.
I think it's the biggest school in our area, and they're very well equipped to kind of to help students with special needs. So there are other kids with different types of special needs that go to the school, and even some of Nina's friends with Down syndrome, they go to the same school.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So her friends have kind of transitioned through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big thing, isn't it?
Well, friends from different preschools.
Right. Gotcha.
So
Okay. Well, I've got lots of questions here. We're sitting at about 50 minutes, I think, now. So I want to kind of dive into question here is, how has Nina changed you since she's come along?
She's definitely trying to make me more patient. And I think whenever Nina was born and I was researching about Down syndrome, I think there was a famous actor, I can't even remember their name, but they said, all you need is three things: patience, patience, and patience, to help your child with Down syndrome, and that's all you need. So yeah, Nina definitely helps me become more patient. She helps me become less judgmental.
Yeah. Yep.
One day when Nina was very young, 3 or 4 perhaps, and we were on the subway, and there's an older man sitting across from us, and he looks maybe homeless, maybe not. A guy that I would avoid at all costs. And Nina starts waving to him. And he waved back. And I just thought, you've made his day. And why should you be so judgmental about just the way somebody looks? And she doesn't see that. And so things like that I can learn from Nina. So
that's cool. That's awesome. I love that. Sounds. I know. Kind of. I've had moments like that as well.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, yeah, he doesn't. For him, it's irrelevant to what they look like
It's
or
a
who
person.
they are. Like, yeah. That's great. So if Nina has changed you, how has she impacted other people around her?
I think the biggest impact she's had on another person is her brother. He is very patient and very kind. And Nina can be sometimes quite hard on him. So she blames him for something that goes wrong.
Right.
Or if she has lost something, it's Neo's fault. But he's very kind and very gentle, very patient with her. And it's not just with her. Recently, we were on a trip with some Japanese friends, and they had younger children. And Neo was playing with their children. And the parents said to me, "Is Neo always so kind?"
Well, that's sweet, eh?
And I thought, when I was his age, I wasn't so kind. But he is very kind and thoughtful person. I think she has really impacted his personality.
That's awesome. That's great. And that's like your situation and my situation are in a way kind of reversed because Neo's 2 years older than Nina, and for us, Jamie's 2 years older than Joshua. So we probably have a lot of similarities in a way, but naturally because one is older than the other, kind of that can pose kind of other challenges for us as dads as well, right?
Yeah.
So we are kind of, you're 8 years in, I'm 14 years in. What advice would you give to yourself if you could kind of, whisper in your ear, thinking back to kind of, like, what advice would you kind of give to yourself back then?
What advice? I'd say to myself, don't worry, everything will be okay. And it might take, things will take a little bit longer. But Nina will get there,
Mm.
and I will get there as well. Another thing would be just to accept help. It's really important to talk to other people in similar situations. And so someone wants to talk to you, try to find people that you can talk to. Listen to their stories and listen to how they have dealt with their experiences. And that will be very helpful.
Did you find that when you were going through the early years, and if you heard someone's experience, did you, like, how did you kind of take that? Because I think sometimes, again, because we felt so alone, right? Is that we felt so alone, but if some people were talking to us and trying to, tell us about their stories, we were like, your story is like not mine. Like it's nothing like mine. It's like we kind of start comparing, like who's got the more difficult journey, or who's. And I remember this. I remember myself pushing kind of people away and not really listening, because I just felt like, again, I was like, it was almost like I indulged myself in feeling like I was, I felt like I was the only guy in Japan with a Down syndrome child, a mixed kind of Japanese and Kiwi child. It was almost like I was indulging myself in this.
Yeah.
And people would try and kind of sometimes would come into my world, but I just was like, no, I couldn't relate. And I think that could be that was for me how I
Did you try to find help at that stage?
I don't remember actively going out and for a long time, and really starting to try and find people who in Japan and even outside Japan that was just like way beyond me at that point. I was just, I think I was just still trying to deal with, acceptance, because it's taken me 11 years to accept it.
Yeah.
And, to start the acceptance, I should say, because I don't think that for me it's not a full acceptance. But I would just feel, that I was just, people would come in and be like, hey, but I was just, no, I didn't want to bring it into my world. I think I just pushed away people who wanted to help, wanted to, be of kind of moral support.
Yeah.
And, I don't know.
Well, I remember trying to find help at the start, and I remember looking up the Down Syndrome Association in Japan, and their website was all in Japanese. I was like, okay, that's a dead end. And so I tried at the start to find help, and I gave up quite quickly. But going back to what you're saying with, people will have different experiences and they will deal with them maybe differently from how you would do it. But I also think it's really good to hear what they did. So maybe you have a different opinion, or maybe you have a different idea of a way to do something. But I think it's just good to kind of hear, how did that go? It worked well for them. It might work for us.
Exactly. That's you're so right on that, because it's just, I don't think I did it the right way. For me, I can look back and be like, that was just not. But I was almost paralyzed, and I just locked myself into doing work.
Yeah.
Threw myself into work, because that was something I knew how to do. And that was the school. It was my school, and it was like, boom, there it is. I can do that, because there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do. I was able to drive Jonko to and from appointments. That was, if I wasn't working, I'd be like, right, I'll drop you here, I'll drive you here. So I was like the taxi driver.
Yeah.
But when I'm there, I was just like, felt somewhat hopeless. And like, what do I didn't feel like I was a burden. I just felt like I just like couldn't do anything else. Tried to do what I could do at that point. And it's just, talking about it is always, hearing other people can hear how we kind of our journey about the challenges and where we felt like we just don't have the tools, we don't have the answers, you know. And I think living in a country like Japan with the language challenge, like it adds a layer of complexity to our lives. There's no denying that. It's just, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It absolutely is a massive challenge. Like, what does Nina love? What does she really love?
She loves music and dancing. Every night, she enjoys dancing with her mum. Just before she goes to bed, she'll do like a dance routine.
How's your downstairs neighbours? Are they okay with that?
We've got the floor padded a little bit,
right.
And they're not too noisy.
Okay,
they're not too noisy. But she loves music. She loves Frozen, the movie.
Right. So she's she's still into Frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And recently she's into Moana.
Right.
Yep. She likes that kind of like Disney kind of, but also she's probably been influenced by her brother because she loves Jurassic World.
Right. Oh, interesting.
On
that's
Netflix,
great.
and she'll watch it. She loves watching it.
Okay.
She loves French fries as well.
Don't we all?
So 2 weeks ago, I took her to her favourite Mossburger for French fries.
Right.
And yesterday, we were going to go out for lunch, and she said, Daddy, Mossburger. I was like, no, Nina, we can't go to Mossburger 2 weeks in a row. So we went to a different place.
Fantastic. What I can see is you just light up. Your face is lit up when you're talking about this. It's just like this big ray of sun when you're talking about the things that she likes and what she loves, right? Because that's those things are huge for us as well, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that we can do that. That's how we can, we feel that that's how we can be the dad.
Yeah.
Right? We can do those things. We can take them there. We can, get those smiles and, that's a big box, isn't it, for us?
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
But she loves swimming pool and slides.
She likes the slides, like the hydro slides and stuff.
Well, not so big, just kind of average, kind of like height and speed.
Okay.
And so, for her birthday this year, we talked about like what should we get her, because usually for birthday, like to get like a bigger kind of present, but for Nina, she doesn't really want anything that expensive. And we decided then just have a family day at the local pool.
Well, that's
and
cool.
a slide. And
Awesome.
she's been a few times. And we went and she had a great time. And as soon as we came out the door, she turned around and she said, Daddy, thank you.
Oh, awesome.
And she's very quick to say thank you.
Oh, that's cool.
She's not so quick about saying sorry. But she's very quick about saying thank you and I love you. But
Oh,
sorry is, we're still working on sorry.
that's lovely to hear, man. That's awesome to hear.
So
That's so cool. So is she okay? Actually, you about swimming. Is she okay, like going under the water?
well, actually, before we went to this swimming pool with the slides, she couldn't go under the water.
Right.
And that was kind of a problem at school
Yeah.
swimming, because they're like, she won't go under the water.
What happens when she would go under the water? And if she would kind of accidentally kind of go under, would she just get upset? Or
I don't know. I
Right.
didn't see because I wasn't at school.
Okay.
But when we went to these slides, because naturally she would go in and under
Yeah.
and then up quite quickly. It wasn't so deep. She got over that fear really quickly.
Oh, fantastic.
And so the first time she went, and then she went back to school swimming lessons, the teacher was like, she can put her head under now.
Oh, wow.
And I
That's
think it was
great.
all because of the slides.
That's awesome, eh? So there's little things, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
our lives are in like slow motion, aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's little things that just happen at their pace, eh?
So sometimes it just happens naturally. Sometimes you can't teach some things. They just have to come
That's right.
at her pace. So.
Exactly right. What was something that made you laugh kind of recently with Nina?
Nina, she's quite a comedian at times. Even this morning, she was lying in bed. She woke up.
Today's a school day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And she put the blankets over her whole body and over her head.
Yeah.
And she said, "Daddy, Daddy." So I went into the room, and then she pretends that she's not there. So I tickle her, and then she wakes up. But just things like that, she makes you smile.
Yeah.
Recently, she's doing like the love heart with the fingers. And she'll do that with her mum, and sometimes she'll do like a really small one or a really big one, and things like that. She's just will make us laugh. Sometimes after bath, when she's going to bed, she'll get changed into pajamas, and then she'll put on her sunglasses. I should get her like little guitar,
Yeah.
and she'll start playing guitar with the sunglasses on, and things like that just have us in stitches all the time.
Do you, with those moments, sometimes do you, like, sometimes like you've got your own world of stresses going on with work and things like that. Those moments, are you always like, oh, that's fantastic? Like you're just like, oh, it's like, oh, like it's so funny. Or do you have to kind of pull yourself into those moments and be like, I've got to enjoy this?
No, I do think I naturally enjoy it. And
Yeah.
it's,
That's good.
It's just in the moment. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I got last question here. What are 4 words that sum up your life as Nina's dad?
4 words that sum up my life as Nina's dad's. I wrote these down because I needed
Out comes the phone.
I needed to
Did
think.
I
think
know.
about this.
Exactly. Like, what are these 4 words? That,
So the 4 words I wrote down were happy,
yeah.
proud,
Mm.
patient, and love.
Oh, awesome.
Those are 4 words I wrote down.
Fantastic. A great 4 amazing words. And through the whole talk that we've done, as you can hear just all those things there. And that's great. It's just awesome. And hearing your story and the journey, and the journey is still going because it's, she's only 8 years old, and it's just, there's so many things
Yeah, so I'll be coming back to you soon for advice about junior high schools and things like that.
Yeah, that is the next one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're already trying to work out, kind of get a head around that, and it is again a challenge. So it's just trying to beat down the walls and trying to get us into an inclusive society, which I know that that's where he thrives. That's where he thrives Jamie just, that's where he is the best. For us, and as for him, that's exactly where we need to be.
Yeah.
So, and Nina at the moment, so she must be in grade 3.
Grade 3.
Grade 3, yeah. So so she's got 2 more years, and then it's into the junior high school ring. So, and wow, man, it's been awesome. It's been great, and thank you for coming over and doing the first in-person, face-to-face guest.
Thank you very much.
Great, so awesome, and I'd love to have you back in if you'd come back, join us again.
Definitely, yeah.
And talk about more and kind of go into more detail about other things as well. But for now, I think we'll finish it up. And it's been great. It's been a pleasure to have you sitting opposite me here and talking away. So again, thanks Mark for that. It's been great.
Thanks, Steve.
All right.